Hiya, so yeah, it's me again, Rachel. Today's video I'm talking about the first session of the DBT therapy that I've done, which I did this morning. DBT, for those of you that don't know, is Dialectical Behaviour therapy, and it is it's not an exact definition, but it's about discovering balance. As I mentioned in previous videos, one of the main symptoms of borderline personality disorder is how you see everything as black or white. There's no in between. So the dialectical behaviour is kind of learning new skills to bring yourself kind of into the middle ground, recognising that there can be many truths and sides to different things, and help and regulate your emotions around that. So yeah, this morning was my first session. The cycle, so a therapy cycle, lasts for 26 weeks. So yeah, that's every week for 6 months, kind of a minimum, and at the end they then reassess, and if they think you need to do it again, you then go back and do another cycle. The structure is that there's 4 modules. They're not called modules, but I see them as modules, and they're kind of split into 6 or 7 weeks that you spend on each of them. And the first one is to work on your mindfulness skills, and then it's interpersonal skills, emotional regulation skills, and distress tolerance skills. And it's made up of a mix of both theory and practical, and also it's done in group sessions. In the session today, I think there was 7 of us, and there's a lot of peer feedback, encouraging, commenting on others' progress, and kind of cheerleading each other. And I found that interesting because when I was first recommended to go on this sort of therapy, they said it was in groups, I was kind of expecting it to be oh, here's a PowerPoint, take some notes, bye. But it is very practical. It's very very interactive. That's the word I was looking for. So as I go along with these videos, I'll be explaining a bit more about what the sessions are, and because at the moment I only kind of know the overview of it. I don't know the the depth of it yet. And from it I made some personal goals that I want to hopefully achieve by the end of the 6 months. The first one is to stop self-harming, for obvious reasons. The second one is kind of after an argument with a close one or friend, is to stop considering suicide is the obvious option. Because that's the thing. It's not I think about it, I think that's the only obvious option. To see a more middle ground when it comes to things, not seeing everything as so black and white, and also to try and stay calm in a conflict, and to also stop escalating things into a conflict. As I mentioned yesterday, the whole drama at the gym where she was you should have come in your gym clothes. In an ideal world in 6 months, my approach to that should be, okay, no bother, thanks for letting me know, instead of having a full-on conflict about it. So yeah, the module we started with this week is about like mindfulness, and the mindfulness. I always thought mindfulness was like kind of sort of like knock off meditation. It's like it sort of is a little bit about that, but it is about kind of focusing on the now. Not overly worrying about the past and not overly worrying about the future, kind of trying to just be a bit more present. So how today's session started, I'm not going to go into super detail about everything we've done. I'm just kind of giving an overview and what my thoughts about that was. So to start with, there was a story. It was about like the cracked pot where, I don't know the story verbatim, but basically it's the one where, someone has 2 water pots and each day, they carry the water to work or something, and one of the pots has got a crack in it so it leaks, and then like the pot's like, will say, oh, I'm not doing my job properly, and the person carrying the pot says, oh, well, on each side I put like sort of flower seeds, and then because you leak, you then water the flowers and we now have flowers to enjoy. So even though you think you're broken, you don't need to be fixed because you've done the job, or you're perfect as you are. And then like after the story, we then had to go around like talk about how it made us feel, how did it relate, etc. And I mean, first of all the giggles because it sounds like crackpot. But I don't know, I kind of made at the end I was a bit like, well, how is that relatable? Because you're saying, oh, this pot's perfect, we don't need to change anything, blah blah blah. And yet we're here at therapy because we do want to change. So, and then obviously, other people in the group sort of gave feedback, and they were saying, it's not about you change. It's relatable because you're not changing as a person, so in this case you'd still be the pot, but it's all about changing the kind of perspective. That's okay, good point. So it's not about changing who you are fundamentally as a person, it's just about changing different ways you look at things. So if you were the pot, you're not seeing yourself as a failure because you're not carrying a full pot of water. Yeah, I hope that makes sort of sense. And then also part in DBT, like one of the main activities is like you sort of have to keep not a full diary, but through the week you're expected to do a diary on sort of things that you've sort of struggled with, your emotional behaviours. I won't go too much into detail about that because obviously it being my first week I haven't done one. But that was interesting because you can kind of hear like how other people have behaved, and you can sort of see yourself in that, and it kind of makes you realise maybe I'm not I'm not the only person that behaves like this or reacts like this. And it was good for like learning tips on how better to manage things. So yeah, the main theory today, it was learning about how your mind reacts different to scenarios. As I said, so I now keep jumping back and forth, but I'm trying to do it like as natural as I can. We said like the definition of dialectically is about seeing the two sides of things. So what we were going through today, it was about the rational side of your brain, which which focuses on facts and statistics and, you know, concrete rational evidence. And then you've got the other side of your brain, which is the emotional side of the brain, where you act on impulse and emotion. Well, yeah, it's called emotional. And people with borderline personality disorder generally tend to stick mainly in the emotional mind, which I found quite surprising, because usually a lot of things, you know, I am very rational about. You know, I like to know facts. I like to know, you know, what's happening if I make a decision. You know, I do like statistics and graphs and things. But then, like, as like we're talking about it, it made me realise a lot of decisions I make is when I'm emotional. You know, the times where I've left jobs, it's because it's been based on a feeling. If I fell out with people, it's because I've been emotional about it. And, like, not a lot of my decisions actually are based on, like, the facts and that. And so with mindfulness, I think the aim is to be able to bring those two together, you know, and then make decisions based on both of them. So, for example, I think how it might be applied in the future, if we go back to the example of when I've left a job before, you know, I might have got an email from my supervisor just saying, oh, I need to speak to you at 2 o'clock. Now, what I'm, like, in hindsight, what I'm realising is the emotional side of my mind was, you know, jumping to a conclusion. It was assuming it was because I was going to be in trouble, therefore I'd feel threatened, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to leave then. Now, at the time, I thought that was based on fact. But now in hindsight, I'm noticing that actually there wasn't any rational thought into that. I mean, there was no evidence it was going to be a bad thing, you know, there was no evidence. So, yeah, like, if I, you know, maybe if I had the, you know, sort of a better ability to kind of mix the two, my initial reaction might be, oh, it's going to be bad, but then I would have been able to draw on this one going, says who. So the mindfulness of maybe focusing on the noun, I could just go, right, this is an email, we'll wait till 2 o'clock and see what they say. I think that, you know, that's kind of what I need to work on. I mean, this is like just kind of for one session, you know, so, and like, this might sound like really obvious to a lot of people, and, you know, in theory, when I'm being rational now, sitting and thinking in hindsight, it does sound very obvious, but when it comes to it in the moment, it's just like kind of not there. And then we started to touch upon, but we didn't go into fully. It's about a part of mindfulness is active participation in activities. Like, one of the barriers to kind of not being mindful about things is you don't allow yourself to become absorbed in things, because, you know, you might be judging yourself, you might like feel silly, or you don't want people looking at you. And like, some of the examples to this is like, you know, let's say, you know, you go to a nightclub or you go to a wedding and everyone's up, you know, sort of dancing, and you'd rather, you know, just sit there because you don't want to look like an idiot. And I mean, that's so common, you know, people do have anxiety, but it's also about that anxiety about participating in things stops you from doing, even thinking about stuff. I got, or it's a way of sort of overcoming the fear of being judged. I'm not too sure. I think I'm going to go more into that. And to be honest, like what we've gone over, it doesn't sound like a lot, but as I said, there is 7 people in the group, and each person gets given the same amount of time to talk and go through. Kind of going through the diaries takes up a large portion of things, but I think it's always like really good to get feedback from what's happening, because the thing is with borderline personality disorders, you're not born with it. I think it says you can be born with an inclination to get it, but you're not, it's not something like autism, it's not something like dyslexia. You're not born with it. You can be more susceptible to it, but nobody knows exactly why. There's an argument for it being sort of biological, but there's also an argument saying that it's more of a nurture thing. Some people argue it's a bit of both. And sort of receiving kind of positive feedback, can kind of overcome some of those issues. But yeah, that was the first week. And everyone was really friendly, because I was anxious about what's it going to be like. And everyone seemed really nice. The 2 people who lead the sessions, they're really nice, and they just talk to you like an adult. It's not, it's not preachy. It's not here's a PowerPoint. It's not a TED talk. They seem really helpful. I came away from it sort of really getting value from it, and I can see. I can see that it is going to be helpful, and in a way I kind of like that it's going to be broken up into very small chunks, one bit at a time, because usually I'm the kind of person, I want all the information, I want it now, and when I was at uni, and they used to put a PowerPoint up on the intranet to say what next week's session is, and I would do all the reading about it. I need to know everything, I need to do it all. Whereas with this, I'm going to try and, I'm going to just try and do each bit at a time. You get a bit of homework or extra reading each week. It's not a massive amount, it's half an hour, but I want to try and take it just 1 week at a time, because I think if I try and rush, or I did have a quick Google, see if I could find any more information, but some of the sources were a bit sketchy. So yeah, I'm gonna just keep it 1 week at a time, and keep plodding on, and just letting you know kind of what's happening. But yeah, thank you.